Hello everyone, and welcome to Plugin of the Week, Point Blank weekly broadcast live from the Hub in London. I'm JC, and today we're going to look at a plugin from Eventide called T-verb. And obviously it's Black Friday coming up, so you may want to check some of the deals. Eventide are doing a lot of amazing deals, as you know, all your favorite plugins companies, so it's a good time to look into plugins. And if you haven't tried some of the plugins that you've kept your eye on, good time to do a quick demo and get some good deals going on. And also for Point Blank it's the same. Keep an eye out for any code that may come for Black Friday. So T-verb. T-verb was designed by Eventide in collaboration with the legendary producer Tony Visconti. And I'm just going to open an instance, so make an introduction to you, everybody. And it is an unusual plugin. It is, as its name implies, it's a reverb, but it has a twist to it, and it's a specific type of reverb, and it was based on a production mixing recording techniques, actually, that Tony Visconti used when he recorded Heroes with David Bowie. The story, and you may want to check, the story goes that they had only one track left and David Bowie to record the vocal. So Tony Visconti set up a specific setup, kind of a close mic to record the voice, but also two additional mic in the room. The room is based, it was recorded at Anne's studio in Berlin, legendary live room. Many artists have recorded albums there. It is a great sounding room, a huge room. You can fit about 100, full orchestra, full choir, you know, that kind of really big space. That sounds really good. So Eventide decided to kind of recreate something based on that technique. So as you can see here on T-verb, you've got 3 channels, 3 mics, and that replicates the settings. But before we go any further, for me, I've tried it in different configuration, and it can do a lot more than just that one trick. And obviously the first preset, as you will see here, when you open T-verb, is the Heroes vocal stereo. The original was actually recorded in mono, and that means the dry signal, the voice, the closeness of the voice, as well as the mic ambience were recorded all on the same track, you know, and I love that technique of committing when you record. So there's a lot of different ways you're going to use T-verb. You can use it as an insert or as a bus, depending on your needs. Typically on vocal, I normally would use it as a bus because I would want my dry vocal treated the way I like to do it, and then add that kind of nice space to it, for example. However, to start with, I wanted to use it in kind of its insert mode, in that kind of David Bowie Heroes type of. And so I had this vocal, it's already a bit compressed, there's EQ and all that kind of stuff. That was my previous treatment. And then I've removed a lot of the sense effect that I had on that mix, and instead inserted T-verb here. So I'm soloing the vocal. And I'm going to solo those mics, I'm going to mute those mics. So when you use as an insert, you need to leave the first mic on, because otherwise nothing goes through, obviously. That's your direct sound. And obviously sometimes, if you're really happy with the sound of your vocal, putting it through that, you may not want to necessarily, you know, and in which case, if you don't want to use the mic 1, the close mic, you should use it as a bus. But here I'm going to use it, and I'll show you what we have. We've got a compressor. Obviously, we've got compressors here already set up, so I'm not going to use the compressor. But if I wanted to, I could. I'm going to bypass them. Quite heavily compressed here, what I've done. Your brother looked to see. Hey, I made a new volcano roar. How come no one believes me? You see, there's a lot of dynamic going on, so that's why it's explaining why you've got. At your window. And I mean, the single compressor does a good job as well, so it's a matter of choice whether you want to use the one included in the plugin. what I love about that interface is you've got all in hand, so you can really quickly get somewhere. But like I said, for now, for that example, I'm just going to go back because it was already compressed and the dynamic was dealt with already. So I've got my first mic here, and I can mute it, solo it, inverse the phase. I mean, I love the interface, like presented as a mixing desk. I think it works really well. If I hover my mouse here, you can select what type of mic. Not the type, because I think it's based on the U67 from what I've read. And then the two rooms, one are 87 Neumann and a 67 Neumann. But what you can do is you can put a high pass or low pass, and you can change the pattern. So you could have, at the moment it's a cardioid, which is typical, the kind of things you would do for vocal. But you could put it as omni or figure of 8 and have a listen to the difference. Straight away, by putting it as omni, hey, I made a new volcano roar. You're capturing a little bit of room, by putting it into omni, for example. But here I'm going to keep it, as it was a cardioid. And then the idea when Tony Visconti developed that recording technique was that obviously this mic was heavily compressed to control the dynamic of the vocal. And then he set up two mics in this room. Amazing room. One here at 18 feet, and this one is at 57 feet. So a lot further away. And the idea was that let's bring the first one. So you're going to have a little bit of the room here. Through a rocket window. Let's have a listen to it on its own, solo it. Your brother looked to see, it's a nice sounding room. And then I'm going to bring the big one. How come no one believes me? That is the third mic, the one further away. And what Tony Visconti did at the time, he did put a gate on each of them. And the gate was keychained by the vocal itself. What it means is that it allows you to create something where the louder the singer sings, the louder his voice becomes, the more it opens up the gate on the room itself. So I've done that. Obviously on this track it doesn't really demonstrate it fully because the track is projecting pretty much all the time. But that's still, I've put that on the second mic here, on the third mic, sorry. So let's have a listen to the context. You hear it, especially on this part, you hear it on the hey, where you hear more of the reverb because that's totally fully opening the gate. So kind of a really interesting technique used in production. I've heard it on Nirvana albums and lots of rock album, and actually vocals, in general, it's not unusual to have maybe the voice a little bit drier in the verses, in the quieter, you get a bit of intimacy, a closeness to it, and then hitting the big chorus, and then you open up and bring your effects. And typically you can do that with that way, or you can do it with different reverb setup in your mixer, and you bring them in and out in your mix as desired. So that's one way to use it. And what I love about also the design of this plugin is that you've got this overall reverb control. The typical reverb control you would have on any reverb, decay, diffusion. You can shape the top end and the bottom end. Typically in rooms, around 300, I find they can become a bit boomy, so you tend to have removed that a couple of dBs here. Top end I was happy with, so I kind of left it. And that's your decay here. So if I increase the decay, obviously the room becomes longer time. And then all in relation. So these settings control all the three mics here. It's for the three mics. So if I put a longer but bring the mic closer, that kind of combination will give you different results. So really, really interesting what you can achieve, with that plugin. What I love about it is the interface, the ease of use, and the room sounds really good. Obviously, it sounds, for me, it's better on rooms rather than anything else. It's not a plate, it's not a hall. It's that one room, but that one room sounds great. And for me, especially back in the 90s, that kind of plugin would have really saved some of my mixes where sometimes the engineer didn't record the room really well, or the room wasn't really good, and you're not happy with it. And I'm going to demonstrate that. So for me, it works really great on acoustic instruments, and you suddenly give them some life by putting them in a real room that maybe wasn't there in the first place. And I think that's becoming so useful nowadays, where everybody records at home, in small studios. We don't have the luxury of beautiful room like these ones and really great mic to capture the sound of the room. So that was used quickly as an insert to give you another view of the plugin. But what I wanted to do was also look at the drums. Because for me, the drums, the room sound of the drums is such an important part of the drum sound. And the fact that now we've got this nice room, I wanted to try it. So originally, I've got those drums here. So let's have a listen. I'm going to mute that. And this recording actually has rooms, so let's have a listen with the rooms. There's a mic. There's one room here. There's another one heavily compressed to tape. So we've got rooms, but I'd like to replace it. So what I've done, I've set up an aux on aux here, 26. I've set up an aux, so I've put it as a bus this time around. And because I want to use it just for the two rooms, not the direct, not the close, and you could on drums as well, and you could compress and really get interesting texture. But here in that scenario, I wanted to see how it behaves as just a couple of mics in a room. So I've set up stereo mics, and really interesting to notice straight away. You can take the mic and move them, and they're totally, you can automate them as well. So you'll see a lot of videos where you see those mics dancing around, moving by themselves. And you can actually get interesting results by just automating the mics moving in the room. Things is not really possible to do in real life unless you get some assistant to do that very in a most discreet way. So let's see this one. I've put it 20 feet, so I'm going to put this one 20 feet too, from the source of the sound. And then I've got this one at 19 and 20, so I may move it slightly more. When did I say I was 20 feet? So here I'm getting, fairly good stereo picture of those two mics. And what I've done is I've balanced them. So mic 1, I've panned them on the left-hand side. Mic 2, on the right-hand side. So therefore, I've got my stereo mics, getting that kind of stereo sound. And what I've done, as you noticed, I've reduced the decay quite by a lot. So now, let's go to the mixer. I'm going to solo the drums, but this time around, I'm going to bring the room with it. Without the room. With the room. I mean, it sounds pretty accurate. To me, it sounds like the kind of drum sound I would love to have. The drum room that I would like to have. And that makes such a big difference. The way I've set it up as well, worth looking at. Obviously, anything that was room in the original recording, I didn't send into the room because it didn't make sense. But I've sent the kick, the snare, the hat, the toms, and the overheads, the cymbals. Both of them, I sent them, and I've sent them as pre. You can see Lee here. I've sent them as pre, so that means it doesn't affect if I move those faders, because what I wanted to end up on my mixing desk was all my mics, my direct mic, and the room, and I just push the room less or more or less, the mic more or less, but it doesn't affect how much goes into the room. So that's quite important, I think, to be aware of that. Let's see on here. So let's bring it back. Let's play with it a little bit. So I've got those two mics here. Same level, because I wanted them as stereo mic. And short decay. Maybe I'll use a bit more diffusion. Let's push it a bit more. Like a great room. And obviously straight away, let's move them on the side, totally go extreme stereo. No, to be honest, I wouldn't really do that on in a room like this one. I'm very unlikely to do that, but just to... Sounds pretty wide as well, and now let's put it just because we can. And obviously here it's starting to sound a bit more like a reverb because we've put it so far back that it's not so much a room now. It is a big room, but and you could have a combination of it. And you see there's a lot more decay. And obviously if I bring up the decay, still sounds awesome. But it's a different room, it's a bigger room. So let's bring it a little bit as it was here. Well, I think I was on 20, something like that. Yeah, that would be for now. And if you wanted, that rock sound typical where you're compressing the room sound quite heavily, how about we put nothing like an omnipressor from Eventide as well, and you're really getting some result here. And then I'm hitting it really, really hard to the point where it's pumping, on purpose, but straight away it's quite interesting as well. I mean, to get that kind of pumping sound a little bit, I mean, maybe it's over the top, but hey. So here it is as a creating a room via a bus system. And I'll bring those two rooms as well, which are mono. And now I'm happy I've got a big stereo room. Okay, and I tried it on the guitar as well. Let's try. So it has a chorus which is here. Works really great as well. And here I've done it as an insert. I've used it mono, so literally as if I was recording, I was putting a mic right against the amp, and then a little bit further in the room. And typically, when I've got enough track, and with the DAW now, it's countless, I would print that separately. Although more and more, I'm starting to go back to the idea of committing to tape. So, you end up with that. Quite interesting, kind of works straight away, You hear the amp in the room. And I've put another one on another guitar as well here. And you hear the room now in the mix. I've just put it on the vocal, on the drum, and on a couple of guitars. Not all of them even. That's just me to try quickly. Then, you could automate, and opening up on the chorus, I brought the third mic. So that's the basic concept of T-verb. It's literally a room, 3 mics, and I love the interface, really works for me. I love the simplicity of it. I love the fact that I can move my mic very quickly, so shape the sound of that room. Another reason I like it is because if I wanted that kind of cohesive, especially with acoustic instruments, and it would work. Electronic music works as well, and especially in electronic music, there are some instruments sometimes as part of the arrangement that are maybe more simulating acoustic, you know. So for me, that kind of room gonna really work really well on any MIDI instrument, like, let's say a piano sample, a string sample, a percussion, fake drums, you know, some drum sample. All that's gonna bring a authenticity and a sense of room and warmth to it that I think it's really perfectly designed for it. And I love the fact that if I start using that across my mix, like I've done on the guitar, the drums, the vocal, it's becoming very coherent all of a sudden because it's the same reverb instead of using lots of different reverbs that maybe don't match always. And I know, you know, in modern music it's probably less relevant and there's still room to use other type of reverb to create other things. But that's one of the best sounding room I've heard, I've got to say. I find digital reverb always a bit tricky to emulate short room. When they get longer, you get something, and you know, and it's a digital reverb. You don't necessarily want to simulate a real reverb. But in the case of simulating a real room, you know, like I'm speaking in the room and you hear the room, that for me is one of the most convincing reverb I've heard. And I'm impressed because it's not convolution reverb, so that means it's all programmed algorithm, and it doesn't take much of CPU. And I've got the BVs here. We could. I think those ones are crying for it. So let's do it one more time. And again, I'll use it maybe as an insert quickly to do it quickly. But then imagine, let's do that, and let's move the mics. And let's put them here at the back of the room a little bit. 53. Sounds pretty convincing. And here we are, straight away on the BVs, and it makes it more cohesive and with the lead vocal. So that's it for us today. That's our plugin of the week. There's tour going on today. Some people are behind me sitting, I believe, coming on to visit the place. So if you want to book a tour at Point Blank, come on Wednesday, 5:30 or Saturday. You can book on the website, on the contact form. And if you want to check more techniques about mixing and mastering, check BA program at www.pointblankmusicschool.com. Have a lovely day and see you soon. Bye for now. Cheers.